Good afternoon and welcome to the Burlington Resource and Recovery Center webinar on youth and family challenges around mental health during COVID-19. We are really pleased to be able to offer this webinar. Again, it's being organized by this newly stood up virtual center that is a project of the City of Burlington's and is an attempt to respond to this COVID-19 emergency and be as supportive of the community as we can. Today's topic is one that I know is of great interest to many families who have children that are experiencing special challenges during this emergency. This crisis has put many families, including mine, in unfamiliar waters and overseeing much more of our children's education and enrichment. We're also juggling parenting and work responsibilities at the same time. Meanwhile, our children are also experiencing tremendous change and missing their peers, their teachers, and the familiar rhythms and the environment. In the webinar today, we've put together a great panel of knowledgeable local experts to help us talk through the tools and the coping strategies that families can use to help manage frustration, anxiety, and feelings of being overwhelmed. Amid the tremendous health and economic upheavals of COVID-19, it is critical for all of us to take care of our mental health and that of our families. If you have more questions or need more assistance after today's webinar, one of the things that the RRC can do on an ongoing basis is provide one-on-one help to anyone who needs it. We also have an enormous number of web resources available through the city's webpage and the RRC's webpage. So I encourage anyone to check it out for any challenge that they're experiencing in this emergency. I'm going to now turn this over. Thank you all again for tuning in. And now I'd welcome Anthony Jackson Miller, our parallel justice specialist with the city's Community Justice Center, and now the mental health lead at the RRC to take over from here. Thank you all for tuning in once again.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining. We have wonderful folks with us today that are going to talk about youth and families and how to handle mental health challenges during this crisis. My name is Anthony Jackson Miller. I am a victim services specialist for the City of Burlington, currently working as a mental health lead for the Burlington Resource and Recovery Center. The Burlington Resource and Recovery Center is the City of Burlington's response to the COVID-19 epidemic that seems to quickly channel people to resources that they need through a call center and a website that is updated daily. We launched our RRC on March 23rd, and we're currently comprised of 38 staff members from 6 city departments. Our topic today will be youth and family challenges around mental health during COVID-19. And I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Anna Bergman, Marlon Fisher, Michelle Fane, and Nerzada Turan. And folks, can you? Anna?
Yep. So hi, my name is Anna Bergman. I go by she, her, and I am a psychotherapist, and I work at Bergman Counseling that's located in Jericho, Vermont.
My name is Marlon Fisher. I go by he, him. I am the youth probation officer for the Burlington Department of Corrections Probation Office, and I'm looking forward to spending a little more time with close friends and family once the restrictions are lifted.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fane. I am the Clinical Director of Outpatient Services at the Howard Center, the designated agency for Chittenden County. I go by she, her pronouns. And so I oversee the delivery of clinical services for all of our mental health substance abuse services for outpatient.
I think you might have frozen. Can you repeat that last part, Michelle?
I'm trying to think what the last part was. So I oversee the delivery of clinical services for outpatient programs for mental health and substance abuse.
And I'm Marlon Fisher. I think we lost Nerzada. Are you
I
there?
think so too.
Okay.
Well,
I
when
can fill the time.
Nerzada comes back, we will have her introduce herself, but we will start with questions. And please, folks, tuning in, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we will get them out and have our panelists try to answer them on the fly. The first question is, how do I support my youth during this time? What are some things that I can do to support my child?
I'm happy to jump in. I think one of the biggest things we can do to support our youth really comes in our relationship with our youth. And so there's so much pressure around academics and routines and kind of maintaining some sense of normalcy, which is important. At the root of all of that, though, is really relationship and attunement. So what will help our youth the most getting through these really unprecedented times and quite frankly, some traumatic times is our relationship and our attunement with them. So the more that we can be present, be with our kiddos, and be available to meet them wherever they're at, that is what, I think is the first and foremost important piece to help support them.
Yeah, I also, because I work with youth who are on the high end of the age spectrum, and I have two young children, I think that being completely honest and transparent too of what's going on is has been really beneficial and helpful in ways to support them. So, telling them, trying to filter information to them, be it if they're 3 or 25, doesn't matter. Just being honest and open has been really a good way to support them.
And also, and reminding yourself that as everybody's in this together. It's not like you and your youth and your family are the only ones alone and the only ones missing out on the school environment, if that's the case. And that the teachers, when they eventually go back to school, if we just sort of look at the academic pressures, the teachers will be prepared for that, and there will be a plan put into place to make sure that everybody kind of gets on board. And so really valuing, as Michelle was saying, the relationship over the sort of academic performance and stressors.
So what would you say to a youth who feels disconnected from his friends, his or her friends, and maybe experiencing some depression or loneliness?
Something that I have been encouraging my clients that are youth that are talking about that is to really, when they reach out to their friends, to have, if they're having Zoom dates or whatever, is to try to find a TV show, because you can easily share screens on these platforms. And even watching a 20-minute or a 30-minute or YouTube videos, or doing something that's not just this sort of face-to-face interaction. Because if we think about it, when we hang out with our friends, we're usually doing something. It's very, very seldom, especially amongst youth, that you just sort of sit there and look at each other and talk. So finding things like that. And now they're putting out even more games that you can share a platform and do those kinds of things together. So trying to find another way to share an experience.
Yeah, I would second that. We've been encouraging kiddos to take walks with their friends virtually. So it's FaceTime or it's Zoom or whatever, and to go for a walk together in their own areas, in their own neighborhoods, and then come up with some creative activities on those walks or on those bike rides or, skateboard rides or whatever those might be. I think the other piece around the depression that's really important is also taking a break from screens. We, have a lot of information at this point and a lot of data and research to show the impact of screens on the brain and how it really activates certain areas and depresses others. And so it's really important also to be outside, getting fresh air, getting exercise, eating well, getting a good amount of sleep, and maintaining good sleep hygiene. All of those pieces will really help folks who are feeling depressed, whether that's a kiddo or an adult, a youth or an adult.
So what would you say to a parent that feels that like right now they're struggling with the work demands, struggling balancing work demands with also supporting their child with school demands and feeling like they're not enough, or afraid that maybe their child isn't getting all of the help that the parent could be providing them?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's been really helpful for me, I just think about my experience during this thing, is I've been in contact with a lot of parents of young, mostly dads too. So mostly a lot of fathers of toddlers, and we've had this group where we've been able to just sort of share our feelings with each other, and that's through it's Dad Guild. So it's a Dad Guild is another organization that we do, but we've been really able to sort of use a platform to share, to be vulnerable with each other, to talk about our frustrations from, everything from potty training to relationship stuff and how we manage and talk to our children. That's been really helpful to be able to check in with ourselves and check in with each other. And that way we can be more supportive towards our youth and our children. So that's been one thing, is to sort of to maintain connections with friends and people who are everyone who's in the same situation together. So that's been great for support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then also to sort of bounce off what Marlon was talking about earlier with the truth and transparency, like also being really sort of naming it, like talking to your youth at home that, oh my, like I have all of these things going on and it's really difficult for me. Like I feel like I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions, and sort of having that open dialogue and asking your youth that's home, like, what is it that you need? What would be most helpful to you? So that, because sometimes it might surprise you that they might not need very much. And then you can sort of check that box and then know that you have given them what they have asked for, and then sort of move on, so that you're not carrying this guilt with you of not being enough in your areas of different areas of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would second, third, all of that. As as parents, we're in this position of doing multiple full-time jobs that it's not designed to work that way, right? It's not designed to be able to go to work, teach your child, parent. So we're in this position that we're asked to do these multiple roles that are all full-time roles. And so it's not realistic. So I also encourage parents to really be gentle with yourself, and give yourself a lot of permission to not do it all, because we're not supposed to be able to do it all. And then I think reaching out to teachers, your kiddos' teachers, your youth teachers, to say, hey, I'm concerned. I'm concerned they're not getting what they need. Is there a way we can increase that support from the school perspective?
So another question would be is, how much pressure should a parent or an adult put on their youth around academics around this time, as opposed to being able to use this time for just mental healing, mental health and emotional health healing?
Mm-hmm. I think I touched on this in my first response in the first question. Academics don't protect your kiddos from trauma and from adverse experiences. Your relationship does, and your attunement does. And so that's not to say academics aren't important and serve a purpose, but they're not succeeding in school right now is not what's going to get your kiddos and your youth through this experience. It's your relationship and your connection with them. So if that is a power struggle, if it's really impacting your relationship negatively, I would put it as a low priority and focus on the relationship and attunement and that healing, because that is what's going to get all of us through this relationship.
Yeah, I would second that. And then also one thing that I have been encouraging, even and from my own kids, is sort of shifting the perspective. So really encouraging them to reach out to their teachers and for them to engage. So it's sort of like using this as an opportunity for them to grow in assertiveness skills of being able to sort of like, oh, I don't understand this assignment, or I am not feeling well today, so I'm not going to turn this assignment in on time. You know, what can I do? When can I turn it in? And recognizing that, you know, these teachers are responding. I have to give, you know, an applause to the incredible support that at least I see both personally and with my clients, the amount of support that they're getting from their teachers and the amount of flexibility that the teachers are showing them. So sort of taking advantage of that to teach my child really useful skills that they can take with them in the future in terms of asserting for what their needs are.
I'd like to take a quick break to have Nerzada introduce herself, now that we have her with us.
Yes, I apologize. Some technical difficulties here. My internet went down. So I'm Nerzada Turan. I go by she, her. I work at Riverstone Counseling Program at Spectrum Youth and Family Services. I am one of the counselors there. Thank you for having me. And again, I apologize for my internet going down. So yeah, thank you.
So another question that folks have had is, how do you explain to your youth that while some of their friends may be allowed to socialize with friends, why they particularly may not be able to?
The simple answer is, you know, we all have different standards, right? Each family has their own set of rules, and we have to be able to. And the way I explain it is, you know, to my 3, almost 4-year-old, is that, you know, we can't do certain things because that's how we do it, and that family might have a different set of rules, and we have to respect that. So we explain to the youth. I feel like the younger, well, all youth, is that they have to respect everyone's reaction or their own standards to how they're navigating with each other, navigating interactions and relationships. So respect, knowing what their standard is and respecting that as well is the best way to share those, react to that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think helping kids to understand that, and youth to understand that, you know, the decisions each family's making is what's best for their family, and they're making those decisions because they think that's what's best. And we, you know, folks may not agree with the decisions of other families, and that does create some tension within families as to why kids can't, you know, hang out with their friends. I think it's just important to come back to families are making the best decisions for themselves, and ultimately not understanding another family's decision is, you know, there's nothing we can do about that other than be kind and be understanding and be respectful of that.
And I also think putting in context of why we as a family, like if my family is choosing to social distance, what drives those decisions for us as a family is important. Excuse me, and to make sense out of that. Also, giving youth other options to connect. In person is just one way to connect to other people. So calling a friend, having virtual get-togethers, so that socially they don't feel fully disconnected, because the youth that I work with are mainly adolescent, and I think a big part of being an adolescent is connecting with your peers and socializing. And while that age group may not be the highest risk right now, I think they are at a very high risk as far as their social needs go and their mental health. So giving options and context as to why we as our own family are making those decisions and what choices there may be for the youth to connect socially.
Yeah, and again, and I'm sort of like opportunities, the opportunities for growth and learning during this pandemic are just slightly shifted than what we normally have. And here again, we have this opportunity to really talk about compassion and non-judgment and being able to sort of see like, well, why, you know, and sitting down and why do you think that family is making those choices? And why do you think that we're not? And using that as an opportunity to see that people, because again, all through life, our youth are going to be put in situations where people are going to make decisions that they don't necessarily agree with, or that they're not exposed, or you know, that doesn't fit into their paradigm. And so using this as an opportunity, because we're all in this together and we're all sort of stuck at home, to take that opportunity to really let's talk about it. Why do different families do different things? Is there a golden rule to, you know, how to conduct ourselves? Like taking the opportunity, if it's age appropriate, of course, to sort of talk about those.
Yeah, and I think with younger kids, explaining why, so that they know, like, we're doing this because people get sick, like really being honest and upfront about the intentions of why, and acknowledging that it's really hard, it's really stressful. And again, finding ways, like, what can we do to help you stay connected? I know some, the school district that I'm in, like my own kids are able to connect with their teachers using Google Meets or different options out there, or with peers, and having, you know, connecting with their classmates if it's a younger age group. And then again, with older youth, I think they're able to do that, and encouraging them to reach out in other ways. But when people have options, or young kids have options, I think it's easier to kind of encourage that self-advocacy and self-growth, and let your needs be known. And how can I as a parent, how can I as a counselor support you in taking those steps? Because as Anna said, this is also a really unfortunate way how we got here, but it's a really good learning opportunity and a way to learn to connect in other ways with other people.
Yeah, one thing that, again, I'm just all talking from experience. So being an essential worker, both my wife and I, my partner and I are, we both work full time, and our kids we're at an essential child care. And so they get to interact with other kids, but they're not at their centers. They're not at their child care centers. So one thing that's really important to me is to maintain friendships, relationships. So when I pick them up from school, we do driveway visits. So we'll drive to a friend's house. I'll roll the window down, and the friends will come to their front door. And so he still has those like real person interactions as opposed to Zoom. So that's been really good for my 3-year-old, you know, in terms of maintaining his friendships that he's cultivated over the last, you know, in the fall and before all of this happened. So
I would say one of the questions that was just asked is, what if your teen doesn't agree with family choices to social distance? What would you say to that teen?
I would ask them why, and I would get really interested and curious, because not agreeing with something can come with, you know, there's a reason behind that, and finding out what that is and how to meet the needs, and validate that, hey, you know, you may not agree with this, but as a family, this is something that we're, again, making as a decision, and here's why. But really asking why and what's hard, because I bet there would be some good information that might come out of that.
I agree. I think it's a time for curiosity and being really curious with your teen and exploring where that's coming from, and because where that's coming from is really valid. And so I agree, validating the difficult position it puts our youth in, and the disconnect from their peers is really hard. It's really difficult and real. So I think being curious and being really empathic and attuning to them in that, and being really sympathetic. And then I think being creative of ways to stay connected to their friends. I like, you know, Marlon, your idea of the driveway hellos and, you know, connection. What are some ways to do that and help support the youth to do that safely?
And I've heard of families doing like scavenger hunts, like leaving notes and gifts for each other someplace, and arranging and for their friends, you know, to either text them where it's at. And so seeing if the reason behind the disagreement of social distancing is super concrete, like that they really just miss an individual person. So trying, you know, as everybody was saying, that like figuring out what the reason behind it is, and trying to figure out ways to resolve that dilemma.
So another question we have is, are you seeing increased anxiety in youth? And if so, what does that look like? And as a parent or a concerned person, what can you do?
Yeah, I'm seeing increased anxiety, and it's really important with anxiety to recognize that it doesn't always look the same for everybody. And so if you're just noticing any kind of behavior that seems extreme and really sort of unusual or out of character for your youth, and it can be from anything from sleeping too much or sleeping too little or having constant stomach aches or headaches to just constantly wanting to watch TV. So all of these are symptoms of anxiety, and it's just really important to remember, like, what's baseline, how does your youth normally act, and is this sort of out of the ordinary? And then in terms of what parents can do, again, that whole idea of connecting with them, talking with them, being transparent, and having those really hard conversations, sitting and just holding their hand, and sometimes humor, like having them show you like some funny YouTube videos and laughing with them as a way. These can all be really sort of short-term solutions that can help go through an anxious period.
Yeah,
And I would also add with anxiety, creating a routine of some sort with the youth or as a family, baking, taking walks, all the things that we usually know are really good for us to do that may be much harder to do right now. So really engaging the youth in going out for walks, doing yard work, baking, whatever it may be for you as a family, crafts, making your own videos, watching TikToks, whatever it may be that the youth also might be interested in as well. Yeah, and everything that Anna, Marlon's right into that one. So that was, yeah.
Trying to learn that TikTok, that renegade.
Yeah.
Trying to learn it,
And it's, we know laughing is good medicine, and there's a lot of really funny things out there. And, if anybody asks the youth what they've seen, and I know I've done this with clients, I've done this with youth that I know in my personal life, and they will definitely keep you entertained and humored for a long time. So embracing that as well.
I'd like to address Karen's question real quick too. So again, like, it's not just children who have this increased anxiety. We also have that as well, and that can come and that can reflect. And our children can see that in certain ways as well. So I would give you. I'm going to talk off from all examples today. During the first 2 weeks, my 3-year-old randomly started. He's fully potty trained. Just started peeing in random places in the house on the floor, and that was him displaying his anxiety around a broken routine. Not doing the same thing over and over again like we were previous to this. And so when it happened, I accepted it, and then it kept happening more and more, and then I had to check in with myself, right? Why am I anxious? What's going on for me? And so I was able to talk with him and figure out what was going on for him and fix that, and where it wasn't happening and it was stopped happening, and that was really good. So really, again, is that we're sitting here talking about, we talk about our youth, but it's also like our relationship with the youth, back to how we, back to the beginning of the conversation. So how we look to them, how we react, how we're handling the situation.
So we have a question here, and it's labeled as a question discussion, and it's very interesting. Mary Olson says, many of the children and families that she works with have experienced trauma, and the time at home has seemed to be healing for them since there isn't transitions to school. The children have been able to relax, and their vigilance has seemed to gone down with no bullying and being able to be at home. What are some ideas for supporting them and preparing them for going back to school again, which is a big thing I've heard from many people. Their children at home, they have this routine that they're doing at home. What is it like, and what can you do to help them transition back into being in school, academics?
I think I think it's a multi-pronged question, and it's pretty a dynamic question, so it's great. And I think one of the pieces is to make sure that in conversations with the youth, that there's reminders that we will go back to some sense of normalcy at some point, and back to school and back to work in the school buildings. And so to continue to have those conversations now, as opposed to a week or a month before heading back into school, so that it's an opportunity to build skills and help the youth think about what will you need when it's time to go back to school. What will that look like? Who are your people in school? And what are your, what are your sort of go-to strategies, and help to build those now at home, I think is one piece of that.
I guess reframing that to for those children who will be going back where school isn't positive for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you support them?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, so their home environment, it's that whole filling buckets thing that clearly if they're being able to go through healing at home, they're getting their buckets filled by the supportive environment that they're existing in. And so having now, as Michelle was saying, having those conversations with your youth about what is it that feels good about being home? Like, what is it that's filling your bucket? Identifying that. And even as hokey as this sounds, like making a little photo album that they can, of this time, of when they felt really good, or writing down in a notebook, like the things that they're doing that makes them feel good about themselves and who they are and their role in the world. And then encouraging them to take that with them to school when it starts back up again, and reassuring them that they can always check in with that that either photo album or notebook or scrapbook or whatever it is, something really small and portable that they can just kind of use as their safe space, as a way to maybe reconnect with that feeling, like tying the feeling with a tangible object that they can then bring with them.
And furthermore, I would say and recommend getting the schools involved. So depending on where the youth goes to school, getting the guidance counselors involved and aware of what might be happening, so that as they plan the next school year and going back to school, collaborating on how to support the youth and what, is it a certain person that is triggering or that's bullying? Could that be resolved? I also know part of my job is working at a local school 3 days a week at a middle school. So is there counseling available in the school? Because from my experience, a lot of youth do struggle in schools and have, do experience bullying and peer pressure and different things. So if there's supports available in the school, getting that ball kind of rolling and planning ahead so that there is a plan upon return to school as well. I know that the team of admin and guidance counselors and students and teachers that I work with are very supportive of students having plans and supports in place. I think that would be really helpful in addressing the anxiety of going back to that environment, potentially.
So we've talked a lot about youth as in children that are middle school aged, maybe some high school. But what would you say to parents who have college aged students who were in university, college, wherever, and now they're back home, their behavior has regressed, they're acting out? How would a parent be able to manage them? Because I think for most folks, you can't simply just send them to their room. That's where all the fun is. What would you do?
Send them to me.
Make TikToks with Marlon.
Yes, make TikToks with me.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. So one thing that, is so you can't, maybe send them to their room, but you can set up house rules, even if they are college age kids. It's still your house, your rules. And if their behavior is making it difficult is affecting people who are living in the house, asking them, take it outside. Like, I don't want to hear it. In my house, we have this downstairs basement. Anytime my kids start acting up, wrestling, or doing something that I feel is like it's increasing my tension, I say, that's not behavior that we have upstairs. You guys can take that downstairs. And there's nothing to say that you can't do that with college age kids too. Just maybe looks different. Like, boys, why don't you head outside and finish that discussion or that sort of behavior?
Mm-hmm. I think too, even in college, right? Youth they have roommates. They live in suites. They live in townhouses. They live communally, and they all have to come to some common ground and agreements of what goes in their living environment and what doesn't. And so inviting them to participate in those house rules and what seems reasonable. We're all living together. Here we are back together. How are we going to work together to be successful, all of us individually and as a family? We're all going to need to chip in and do that. So inviting them to be a part of, like, here are the basic house rules. What is it you need as a college age individual? And so then, doing some negotiation around that and some collaboration.
So what would you say as well to parents who may be single parents, who have children in the household, multiple children, and still have to work and get things done and have that anxiety, that frustration, that stress, where the children have anxiety, they've had anxiety, and they're rubbing each other the wrong way? What would you say to parents in order to try to help cope, or what are some coping skills that they can use to try to manage those frustrations they may have?
I would say number one is self-care. Kids will react based on our energies and our kind of state of being. So as stressful as things may be, it's taking care of yourself, giving yourself a break. It's hard. It's a hard time. If it's hard for multiple parent homes. I think, and then the challenge for single parent homes becomes the ante kind of gets wrapped up a little bit. So taking care of yourself, I think, is really important. Giving yourself a break. Getting creative. If you have children that are different age groups, if one can read, maybe getting that one person to read to the younger child. So really using the resources at hand to help ease the stress of that. And if things aren't, if things are stressful, doing things as a family, getting outside as the weather gets nicer, is some suggestions on my end on that. And just acknowledging, as a single parent, it is hard. We are in a pandemic, and it's okay to not feel like you're overachieving. It's okay to not get everything off your to-do list done. You're succeeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I often use the airplane analogy, that you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help those around you. And so, back to what Nerzada was saying, it feels difficult sometimes to take that time for yourself and do that self-care. And we see the rewards of that when we do prioritize that. So whether that's, taking a walk, or, taking a bath, or, whatever that might look like, doing that, even if it feels like you don't have the time or the capacity, really pays out tenfold for yourself and for those around you. So I think that's really key. And I also think, don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. You have to be really gentle with yourself. You have to lower the bar. No one can do this and do it all. It's just not possible. It's not humanly possible. And so really having grace with yourself and being gentle with yourself is important.
Yeah, and I would second that. And also, sort of pick your battles, pick your narrative, which is just sort of, figure out what's important to you, what's important to your family, and sort of sticking to that, and not letting, and social media can just be so evil in this way that, like, this seems like other families are just managing to do it all, and and sort of comparing yourself to that is just, that's not feasible. And to just sort of figure out your own, like, internally, like what makes your family, what is your family's narrative, and how are you going to create a situation that fits that well.
And something that I've done in my house, and that I've also encouraged other families to do too, is I have a list of coping skills on my fridge, and every time things get a little stressful, or I'm like, I just need to breath right now, I will send my kids to the fridge and they can pick a coping skill on there. So there's 50 different things that they can do. So it's really empowering them to kind of manage themselves a little bit as well. And it gives, sometimes it just takes a pause to get some, ground. So that has really been helpful here in our household. And I would encourage people to try that.
Nerzada, is ice cream on that coping skill list?
Yes, sugar it up.
So
There's a parent one and a child version one.
one of the big questions that gets asked, and it's a really important question, especially when you're dealing with youth that experience behaviors that sometimes parents, they're not used to dealing with because these children and youth are at school. What's the difference between crisis behavior, like behavior that you would call maybe first call for, and challenging behavior that you can deal with at home, but it's frustrating? What are the difference between the two, and how do you manage both?
Well, I think I have lots of thoughts about this. I think certainly safety is a threshold that once that is crossed, is sort of in the realm of needing outside help, and maybe that's first call, maybe that's the police. I will also say that first call, while defined as the crisis team for Chittenden County, the caller defines the crisis. And so if things are really stressful at home and it hasn't crossed a safety threshold, but the adult or whomever is feeling like they need support, first call is there for that. So it doesn't have to be to the point where there's a safety concern, there's aggression, there's self-harm, any of those pieces. So first call is a resource regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, physical safety always, and daring to have the tough conversations, like daring to, as a parent, to sit down and, ask, like, your behavior is really worrying me right now. What do you have a plan? Like, do you feel like you need to hurt yourself? Do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? And asking those really difficult questions. I get it, but really daring yourself to do that, to have that conversation. And because very often the youth will be able to let you know if they're in danger. If they are asked the question, they will usually answer it.
And I would say, as a parent or a guardian or a caretaker, if you have alarms going off, you can call first call. You can reach out to, for counseling, for support in the community. Because if everything is okay, then great. But if not, if you're feeling discomfort about what's going on, asking for help and calling and getting some professional advice on that too, I think is important.
Well, I would like to start with Nerzada, and please tell me or tell our folks watching a little bit about where you work and the services that are offered to youth. And we'll start with Nerzada and we'll work our way through so people can get a sense of where they can reach out to if they need support.
Okay, absolutely. So I work at Riverstone Counseling, which is part of Spectrum Youth and Family Services. And we have a variety of services. My particular role is outpatient counseling, which we have 5 counselors, and we're all working from home, seeing youth daily. We serve families as well. So if a parent or a guardian or a caretaker is struggling and they need support and their youth may not be on board, we do work with families as well and parents. So I would encourage anybody who identifies in that role, who needs support, to reach out. We serve ages 12 to 30 at Spectrum for outpatient counseling. We also have case management. We have a Compass program. We have a mentoring program as well. So as we think about and looking into the future, getting out into the community, getting young youth connected to mentoring, this might be a good time because usually there's a wait list, so you can put the application in and get help with that. If you go on the spectrumvt.org website, for each one of our programs, there's a tab that you can push on, and it'll explain each program and what the services are and how to do a referral. So if you're a provider in the community and you want to refer someone for counseling, family, individual, whatever the needs may be, there's referral forms on there. There's a phone number. So we're all, while we're not in the building, we're all working remotely from different places. So definitely reach out. And we are getting back to people pretty quickly, within 24 hours, 48 hours is kind of our threshold for that. So that is my plug-in, and this is a hard time, so whatever capacity you see yourself in, reach out. We're here, we're not going anywhere for families, youth, communities. So that's my spiel on that piece.
Michelle?
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant backwards on the screen, not backwards alphabetically. So the Howard Center is the designated community mental health center for Chittenden County. So we have services, comprehensive services from outpatient counseling all the way up through residential and everything in between. My role as the clinical director for outpatient services, we work with, kiddos around 5 years old all the way up through elderly. And our access and intake service is the best way to get in to us. And that is on our website, and is also a really easy number, 488-6000. And that can get you connected to an intake navigator, an intake clinician who will assess sort of needs and make referrals as appropriate. The other pieces that I would put out there is a newer initiative, Partners for Access. That is a service for children and families in Chittenden County to help get folks connected to therapists. And so they hold a comprehensive list of providers, availability, specialties, expertise. And so folks can look at that on our website as well. And their number is 488-7474. The one other piece that I would add is CenterPoint. They're connected to Howard Center, also NFI and Otter Creek. And their number is 488-7711, also working with youth and families.
Marlon?
Yeah, so I am the youth PO for Chittenden County. I'm working with youth between the ages of 15 and 22 right now. Partner with DCF, so I sort of share a caseload with a DCF social worker or juvenile service worker and myself. So these are youth who are put on probation through the family court system, which is an opportunity for them to sort of not have a record when they're complete with me. I spend a lot of my time with the youth on my caseload, doing a lot of motivating, a lot of holding them accountable for their actions and showing them how their actions affect others around them. And so I do that through referring them to the community justice centers here in Chittenden County, referring to CenterPoint, Compass, Spectrum, all those programs and providers all throughout the county for therapeutic services, assessments, and then like the Compass program for a little extra support. I also just wanted to say working for DOC has been, I've been with DOC for a little over a year and a half, and the fact that they allowed me to sort of like branch out and be part of the community has been great, and has been really helpful in terms of for me to work with youth in the community. So yeah, I spent a lot of time, I'm a former soldier. I was in the U.S. Army, so I spent a lot of time motivating youth, which is awesome. It's, and I connect, and we talk about connection. So I connect with them. I meet my youth where they're at so that they use my program as a springboard to being successful, not having, and being able to have opportunities once they're done with me to get jobs and not have a charge hanging over their heads. So yeah, that's what I do.
And finally, Anna.
Yeah, so again, my name's Anna Bergman, and I work in private practice in a small practice, Bergman Counseling, located in Jericho. And I work with adolescents dealing with, symptoms of anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues, bullying, behavioral, all of those things. I really thoroughly enjoy working with adolescents. I just find it a very unique sort of age to figure out who they are and where they want to go in life. And, I really look for opportunities of growth, and like I was saying about this pandemic, as awful as it is, there are it does present us with some sort of unique opportunities to grow in ways that together as a family or individually. I do also see adults that are dealing with sort of same spectrum of issues, and as well as grief and attachment issues. So yeah, that's why. And this has been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much, even just being part of this panel. It's been wonderful.
So my name's Anthony Jackson Miller, he, him pronoun. I don't think I said that before. I work for the Burlington Community Justice Center, repurposed now, working for the Burlington RRC. But our Burlington Community Justice Center actually has a portion that deals with youth. I'm the person in charge of that. Her name is Kelly Ahrens, an amazing individual, as well as Virginia Litchfield, who works for AmeriCorps, also helping create a restorative, helping Burlington become restorative for place for youth. And a lot of what we do as far as our youth is working in the schools, supporting high school all the way down to elementary with restorative practices. Our website is burlingtoncjc.org. Great place to go to look at all of the things that we do in the Burlington community that often isn't mentioned, but it's supportive of a lot of work that's done with Howard Center, with Spectrum through their Barge program, with DOC, youth who, we do panels and other things. So in a way, all of us here find ways to connect with each other and support the youth. And there are many other folks in our community who aren't on our panel who do such great work with youth. After this webinar, definitely you can go to our website, burlingtonbt.gov, and on our FAQ page, there'll be also resources that folks can go to find resources for youth, and they can go to United Way, which is 211. They also have tons of resources on where you live in Vermont to support youth. Is there anything that any of our panelists would like to say before
I'm just going to take my DLC I have for a second. I'd like to plug a pretty good organization, Dad Guild, and that's Dad Guild, D-A-D, Dad Guild with a D, not a T. And it's an organization as a community around fatherhood. It's been great during this time. We have a little over 300 members on our listserv. If there are young fathers out there or for young families, it's a great organization to sort of connect with on a father level or the non-birthing parent level. So that's another resource I'd like to throw out there. It's just a community, and that's what we need right now. So my DLC back on.
And before we go, I got one late question, and we have 6 minutes, so I think you folks may be able to get this one in. What would you say to a youth that is terrified that their parent may get COVID-19 and may die? What would you say to them to comfort or support?
I think to start with, the first piece would be really validating that those are worries our youth have for their parents and caregivers. I also think that information in this particular instance is power. And so helping them understand why social distancing, why hand washing, why, the safety measures that we're doing are that much more important, and really helping to prevent more deaths. And so the more that they can do that and be a part of that, the more they're in control of some of those pieces. And, I think not glossing over that that's a real fear. And so it's sort of the both and trying to balance that for the youth, and helping them understand where they do have their power, and doing the best they can with that.
I agree with everything Michelle just said. I was going to say the same thing, but she took the words right out of my mouth.
It's like a mind meld.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you have, or Nerzada or Anna, to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say, like, as a parent, talking also about what you as an adult are doing to keep yourself safe to your kids. So you can sort of talk, as Michelle was saying, like as a family, but then even as like, and as an adult, like I am taking extra precautions. When I go to the store, I'm wearing a mask, and I'm making sure to stay away. That you also sort of have that conversation with your child about that you get their concern, and that you are also taking it seriously.
Yeah. And I'm in the phase right now where my child is asking about death all the time, just about anything, trees. And so when I go back to the beginning of our conversations, being transparent, like people, this happens, and the honesty, and and being honest, and that's still all I can do right now with a 3-year-old, because you can't make it up. I don't want to lie to him.
And I just want to add to one more thing. Being mindful as an adult about conversations that are happening around children and their age and their ability to comprehend what is being talked about. I know as adults, we have a lot of anxiety. I think children have a lot of anxiety. So really being mindful of the conversations that are happening and what our kids are hearing as well is something that I would just like to add.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you panelists. I'd like to thank all of you listeners and participants and folks who asked questions for joining us today. We'd like to hear your feedback about today's webinar. You can send that to recovery@burlingtonvt.gov, as well as letting us know if there's any other ideas or topics you'd like to hear in the future for future webinars. Or if you'd like, you can call us at 802-755-7239. We know that lots of folks may not have access to internet at this time, and we'd like to remind you all to practice social distancing, to be well, and to please stay safe.
Thank you, Anthony, and everybody that came
Thank you.
on.
Yeah, thank you.
Anthony. Thanks, everybody.